So we're really excited to be releasing a new report from Evidence for Learning, which is called Making Best Use of Teaching Assistants. Effectively, it's a report to help schools and school principals make decisions that are evidence-informed around their use of teaching assistants in the classroom. The underpinning value of this whole report is really about supplementing what a teacher does in a classroom rather than replacing that teacher with a teaching assistant. What we've seen through the research, and it's international research, is that so often the students who are struggling the most in the classroom get the teaching assistants time, and so they're really missing out on that teacher quality time, that qualified individual who is often then directed to the most highly attaining students. The UK experience, and a lot of our research comes from the UK because there just isn't enough here in Australia to really provide a really strong evidence base. The experience in the UK was that an enormous amount of money was going into teaching assistants, but the variability between a school who was using a teaching assistant in a really positive way and schools who perhaps didn't quite know how to use their teaching assistants as well was vast. So we were seeing some schools who were seeing really high growth in their students from teaching assistants involvement, and then some schools where a teaching assistant was involved, there was almost a detrimental effect on those students because they were missing out on a qualified teacher's experience. The research going into this report has come out as 7 recommendations. The recommendations are really directed at principals and school leaders, people that make decisions about deployment of teaching assistants. So those recommendations are designed to help principals make great decisions around their deployment, but also to build on that and give them some really concrete steps as to how to do that. Recommendation 4 speaks to making sure teachers and teaching assistants are prepared for their role in the classroom. Often a teaching assistant will not have the preparation time because of their stature in the school, and so they might not have time before a lesson or after a lesson to brief or debrief with a teacher. That causes a big problem because they're walking into a class maybe unprepared for the content they're teaching or not knowing the role that they're supposed to play. A role or a teaching assistant's role can be really important in how students are learning. So we see lots of modification to learning, such as rotating teaching roles, which is a really common one when we see high performance of a teaching assistant and a teacher relationship. Rotating roles is something that means that students will be exposed to a whole lot of teaching techniques, which might include one-on-one time with a teacher or with a TA or in independent learning. But the important value of that is that they don't get the same thing all the time. One of the key factors of this report is that it really comes down to great leadership at a school. The teaching deployment or the deployment of teaching assistants is really crucial, but that decision can't be made by a teacher or a teaching assistant. It needs the support of leadership. That might be the school council, the principal, it might be policymakers or departments, but that's a really key element to think about. And we have seen examples where a really fantastic and skilled TA isn't able to make the impact that they might like because they're not being deployed in the most suitable way.